Back in the studio with Z.
Oh yeah, man. A lot of bands, like I tell, funk is always going to be here, but this generation, everybody want to know about the funk. And you know, the crazy thing about this generation is can't nobody play the funk. They don't teach it in college. They don't teach it in school, and it's rare.
It's like sex. You gotta learn on your own,
You
man.
gotta learn on your own, and you gotta have that feel.
And there's a lot of sex and funk.
Yeah, and sweat at it. But you know, this generation, if you really want to know about the funk, the best thing or the best library there is LPs and CDs. Go back as much as you can to the 70s.
And they're available at every public library for free.
Yeah, Sly and Family Stone, the Barcade,
Barcade,
you know,
Soul Finger.
Yeah,
Word
Cameo, up, man. Parliament Funkadelic Cameo, Lakeside, the Dash Band, wow, T Connection, Slave, Civil Attack, so many. It's just so many funk bands. Rick James, you know what I'm saying? It's just so many people you have to go back and listen to. Larry Graham, Graham's Station, you know. There's so much that you can listen to get the feel of the funk. Mandrill, you know, Kool and the Gang, you know, the Meters, you know. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. Al Hudson in One Way, you know. You really have to do that homework and go back and listen to it.
Now, a lot of people say like funk is more about a feel than an actual technical, you know, than knowing a certain scale or knowing a certain time signature or a certain rhythm. It's more of a feel that you put into the playing.
Right.
And you're known as a professional of that, you know, in technical expertise, you know, stage presence and your timing and your skill at the bass. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit more.
Well, you know, funk is straight pocket. Funk is dance music. Funk is something inside you that's so stanky. Ask George Duke, rest in peace.
Maybe you can explain pocket to the people. Well, yeah.
Everything's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Everything's on the 1. 1, 2, 3.
And that's hitting the pocket.
4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything is on the 1. Pocket is on the 1. When you have room to breathe, but not only that, funk is like jazz, improvisation. It's all about the feel. Jazz and blues. It's all about the feel. It's whatever you feel, it's going to come out. You know, like Lakeside. They're so funky. Let me just do a little quicker look, a little bit Lakeside, what I liked about what they were doing. Funk is what it is. Funk is not a medicine, it's not a pill.
But it is a cure.
But it is a cure. It's the antidote. And nobody said that better than Cameo. It's the antidote. It must be like the music. It always makes me dance. It's the antidote. And, you know, I love funk music, you know. It's going to continue until the casket drops. And when you hear stuff today, samples, everything has that funk. From Roger Troutman, Zap, Bootsy, Xavier, a band that Bootsy produced. There are a lot of bands, man, out there that didn't get publicity like Nitro, which was Rick James' horn section. The punk funk horns was Rick James' horn, but they used to be called Nitro, which was a friend of mine's band, which Rolls Royce, Duke of Rolls Royce, which is a great friend of mine, Duke. He's a very, very, very master-minded, master hand, skill bass player. listen to a lot of those bands, man, because if you don't listen to those bands, you know, you won't learn what the foundation of music is all about, and the foundation is funk.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
all about the bass.
a lot of bands today don't seem to give credit to those roots, you know.
And they don't, because this generation, you know, funk was like a foreign language. It was like back in the 70s when they came out with funk with the groups like the Clash and, you know, Strum, and nobody could understand the funk. But I love the bass line. Lakeside's bass line, you know, Marv is a bad cat. You know, plays so much pocket. Let me see if I can do something. Great bass player. Like, he's funky, he had hands, he had a good feel. And you know, coming out of Arson camp of bass players like George Clinton's people, Funkensteiin, that bass pattern is so funky, man. You know, you can't help but to loosen up and feel it. It's like do that over. Do that over.
Go ahead.
Okay. There we go. That's what I wanted to hear, those two. And you know, playing with George and listening to George's stuff, man, the bass is all foundation. The bass is just overpowering everything, but it's smooth, funky, clean, but with feel.
It seems like I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, and if you can feel funky,
Now it seems like a lot of the kids today, like they listen to Primus or they listen to, you know, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they hear like the accents of the beat.
right?
But a lot of the funk records I remember listening to, and some of the stuff we were listening to earlier, it doesn't seem like that's the prominent part. It seems like the musical, the tone, and the you know the timbre of the bass carries the melody and works with the melody much more than, you know, just as a percussive instrument.
Right. It does. You know, if you listen to Stanley, Marcus, Victor Wooten, Jocko,
Pastores.
Will Lee of the Brecker Brothers, Mark King of Level 42, even less, you know, Flea, all of them, you know, bass turned out to, you know, you've been able, if you listen to Stanley and all those cats I mentioned, they're able to match a rhythm with a rhythm. It's like Miles, you know, staying inside and outside of the melody. And if you listen to certain jazz players being a bass player, Miles stays inside the melody, and then he does some things where he's right on the melody, which complements the melody with another melody, and sometimes he's on the outside of the melody and he complements another melody with another melody, and he blends it all together. And bass to me is like that. You know, it's knowing when to move and when not to move. It's like chess. You know, you got to know when you can checkmate. You got to know when you want to go from 0 to 60, go up and boom, and just drop down and stay where you are, but you don't lose anything. The pocket is right there. You're staying level. You and the drummer. The surface is still hardened. And I like that being a bassist, you know, being a bass player and watching other bass players, the old school cats that really played, because I grew up to where we didn't have a lot of equipment. You had to play. You had to play. You know, wasn't no, you know, no tracks being played behind you. You had to play. You know,
nothing you could download easily. You had to go out and find the records.
Yeah.
You had to go out and you know, break the strings. It wasn't something you could download from home. You had to go out and find it.
You had to find it. And you know, like that's what the funk is all about, finding it. You know, funk is an inner thing. You know, it's about your character. How funky is your character? How funky is your inner being? And funk is something that's not natural. Funk is something that's inside you that makes you want to be an innovator or a motivator, something different, something funky. The way you dress, by your hair, by the shoes you wear, by the way you shit. You know, funk is funk. And if you can't smell it, then you ain't funky.
Now I noticed a lot of the players, a lot of the bands with the big horn sections and the 3 backup singers. You'd be out on the road with 12 people when you were touring with Rick James. What's that like as opposed to when you're playing with like a 3-piece power trio or a 4-piece band when you're 1/4 of the sound versus when you're the bottom end out of 12 players.
Well, it's always been the way, like the band that I'm playing with now, RJ2 Goldie. Go on the internet, on YouTube, put in RJ2 Goldie, and you'll see the shows. We travel with a 14-piece band.
And these are all Rick James original band members.
Excellent,
It's still,
yeah.
God bless his soul, but you guys are still together and still playing.
Yeah, we're still together. There's a lot of new ones. We're like basically some of the new and old Stone City band members. We're kind of like Tina Marie's band and Rick's band. Some of the Rick's band people, we all work with Rick. We're together. So we formed this thing called RJ2 Goldie. Goldie does Rick. And it's kind of like a tribute thing. But you're getting the same funk. It's just rest in peace, he's not there. And I'm quite sure that if he seen...
But he's still with us, yeah.
Yeah, he would be like with a big smile on his face. And... man, George and everybody, hey man, that's the school of funk.
Now I noticed a lot of the old school funk bands, they had a lot of real androgynous wear, makeup and platforms and high heels and men that wear wigs and and it seemed like it was just like they was having a good time. And even if somebody was having a bad day, they would project to other people that to have a good time. No man, you couldn't not have a good time at a P-Funk show or at something like that because you'd go in and see these people. The first time I saw them was on Casablanca Records from when I bought a Kiss album, and I looked at these crazy people in a big alien spaceship, and I gotta see these guys. This is what I want, and that's where it started for me. So can you tell us about that a little bit? What the stage show means and the costumes and how that comes into funk, or who brought that in?
Back in the day, I think the Barcades was the first funk band. Between them and the Funkadelic, George and the Barcades kind of brought that in because of one. George and them was so ahead of their time. George was more in mohawks way back in the 60s. And if you pull up any old memorabilia of Funkadelic, the way that they dressed, it was a movement. Funk was a movement. It was something that where, like your parents said, oh, you got to burn up the records, burn the albums. What kind of music is this that you guys are listening to? Why the hell are you wearing your hair like that? Why are you wearing platforms? It's, it's all a gimmick. It was all about expression, what it was all about. And your expression, what you were about, was your character. And people wore things like that back then was because it was a gimmick and it was a part of the movement. You have to be a star child. You had to be way out in the cosmos. You had to be different than everyone. You have to be above everything, and that's what funk was. Mm-hmm. Even though funk was the foundation of dance music, where it all started from, was the funk. You had to look the funk, you had to feel the funk, and you definitely had to wear the funk. And that's what everybody did. Even stage shows. When we performed back then, it was like you had to be a performer. You had to be able to dance and play and the whole 9 yards, but you couldn't miss a beat. And that's what the funk was all about. We didn't have, tapes you can listen to in the back. You know, we didn't have tracks playing where you can beat, you know, hey, 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 hey. No, it wasn't working like that because you couldn't be doing hey and not breathing. So I grew up I'm one of the last of the Mohegans in the funk thing. You know, it stays the way it is and it stays funky. It hasn't changed in, although how many, 40, 50, 60 years, it hasn't changed. Funk gonna remain the funk. Ask James. May he rest in peace.
There is no substitute for it, you know, and you can tell it right away. I read an interview recently that your big influence was the Duke of Rolls-Royce. Their big hit, of course, was Car Wash, and they had dozens of other singles, and their first three albums went platinum. Could you tell us a little bit about working with the Duke and how he influenced you and what you learned from him?
Well, you know, Duke's name is Joe Quinn, and if you ever watched him on the show that came on with all the lost has-been artists, as they say, has-been artists.
No such thing as a has-been artist.
Artist.
Artist till the day you die.
Artist till the day you die.
And it's just less people like you, that's their problem.
Yeah, unsung.
Mm-hmm.
Duke made me feel a lot more comfortable because being a child prodigy, and, you know, and I used to go, my mother and father, you know, especially my mother raised me, may she rest in peace. She never knew that was something that I hid from her, and I would always pick up instruments and run in the bathroom and say, Mom, I gotta take a shit, and be in the bathroom playing, you know.
And that's the funk right there.
That's the funk. And when I told Duke, and you know, he's like, you know, don't feel so bad because I'm a child prodigy. And he told me play with James Brown, quite a few people, before he got with Rolls Royce. And Duke has showed me a lot, you know, keeping my head on and staying focused on the bass. And just giving knowledge to me as he's given a lot of other people and a lot of other bass players. I've taken bits and pieces what I've learned from being around a lot of great bass players. My cousin is Bobby Humphrey, the first lady of flute and jazz. She's signed with Blue Note Records, and she's still around doing her thing. I love you, Bob. And Marcus Miller started with her at 16. So I listened to Marcus for a long time when I was sneaking listening to her records. And I've learned from boss bass players to take bits and pieces. In other words, I borrow bits and pieces from every bass player that I listened to or found out about that did something that I like. I borrowed it. I ain't gonna say I stole it. I just borrowed. I borrowed some of the little recipes and I added it with my own. So I try to develop my own style. From Mark Adams, you know, from whatever, Raymond Jackson of M2 which is one of the world's most funkiest and dangerous bands. I mean, the list goes on, but I've taken all of these things, even from Will Lee, Stu from Average White Band, Mark King, you know, Jocko, Alfonso Johnson, and Byron Miller, George Duke. Yeah. Funk, you know, Psycho Bass, that's my man. I grew up listening to all these cats, and I like to give a shout out to Calvin Brown, guitar player, bass extraordinaire, wrote from Roy Ayers, who wrote Everybody Loves the Sunshine, my boy. How you doing, man? I taken bits and pieces from everybody, and I learned how to mix them, and they gave me my own style. So a lot of people be like, "Oh man, you sound like such and such." You sound like... No, you hear those influences in me, but they know I sound like me. And they be like, "But it's you though." I'm thinking, "Yeah, thank you."
But these are people that you knew personally, you know. These are people that you you know, went on tour with, and so so for somebody like a student who's learning funk bass now, you know, how would it? How would you translate that? I mean, when it's somebody that you can ask face to face, you know, how did you play this riff, or what did this song mean to you? It's a lot, you know. It's a different feel than somebody listening to a record. And so for like a kid learning for the first time, and he's hearing these sounds for the first time, you know, what would you say to him? And say, like, if you want to have like a great funky pocket, you know, blues and funk riff, repertoire in your arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
What's a great way to start?
Great way to start is for a bass player to remember. One, this is a bass instrument. This is a drum. And this is a percussion instrument. First thing you got to remember is percussion, drums, percussion, bass, percussion.
That's why it's called the rhythm section.
That's why it's called the rhythm section. Ha! Now, if you want to do slapping, I would say you would go back and listen to Louis Johnson and Larry Graham. Go to Larry Graham because he was the one who brung this in, the slapping game in. He's the grandfather of it, and the maker of it, and the mastermind of it. And Stanley Clarke and a few other cats have taken it to a whole nother level. First, get to know the bass, get a feel of the bass. Remember, this is your bass drum. The backhand is the bass drum, and this is your snare. So when you want to start doing the slapping technique, don't do the wrist, loosen the wrist. Loosen the wrist. That's what you want to do. So like when Larry Graham, I watched this video with Larry Graham, and he was showing someone how to play a while back, and I used to watch this video, and he was like, and when I learned him, when I watched him do that, I said, how do you slide into those notes? So I started. Keep this hand moving because this hand will catch up with this hand. So you gotta stay playing, and remember, just play a beat. And that's basically what I would teach a bass player. Learn how to own your bass correctly. Get your feels together. Get your feel together. Get your technique on your strings together, your tones together. Because slapping on the bass is not what it does. You want to be clean with your slap.
Alright, well, we want to thank Z for joining us in the studio. This is the first of a two-part series. We'll come back next week and we'll be learning a lot more about technique, about funk, hearing more of the background of Z, and more of the funksmanship. Thanks for tuning in. Go ahead and play a little outro, maybe. Now just jam for like 10 minutes. I'm going to film you, okay? Beautiful.
See what we got.
Good job, man.
Let's see what we got. Oh, we can't see it.